Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, I want to answer a question that I had gotten from a student, and he had asked me if I could give one tip for increasing strength or the ability to push more weight on any particular exercise, but particularly, obviously, the main compound exercises. What would that one tip be? Now, a lot of different ways, or there's multiple components to this, but I would say that the one single most important thing you could do, I'll take the bench press or dumbbell presses, chest press. Again, that wouldn't matter. Chest press, shoulder press, whichever one you choose. The one single most important thing that I would recommend doing is pausing when you get to the bottom or you get to the end of the negative part of the contraction or the eccentric contraction. Okay, let me explain. It's really very simple. It's one of the reasons why people struggle with this is because it's one of the most easy to overlook components of the repetition. Now, remember, let me just give you a little bit of back information here. Anytime you're performing an exercise, there's essentially four stages or four components to at least say four parts of a repetition. There's two movement components, right? So the negative, like in the case of a bench press, if you start with the bar up in front of you and you let it down to your chest, that's a movement component. That's called the eccentric or the negative. That's when the primary muscle of the movement is going through its lengthening or its eccentric contraction, right? So the negative. And so that first part of the repetition would be, in this case, would be the negative, right? So the muscle is lengthening. So there's two movement components, the negative and the opposite of the eccentric or the negative, which is the positive or the concentric. Now, in between both of those movement components or parts of the repetition, you are in a essentially isometric or paused position before you make that transition to the other movement. So negative is muscle lengthening, and then you have to stop because you're going to have to change directions, obviously. So you go from the negative, that's the first part, into the stretch, what we call the stretch isometric, if you want to call it like that. I just call it the stretch, or where the muscle is lengthened. And just before I transition to the opposite part of the movement or the opposite direction, I got to stop or pause. Now, some people don't pause at all. They literally just boop, pop it and throw it back up. So they come down, boom, pop, and they just do it back and forth just like this, like on a bench press. Okay. Point is that transition or change of direction is technically the second part, in this case, the second part of the movement pattern or the exercise. The third part would be, in this case, the concentric, where the muscle is shortening under tension. And then obviously the fourth component would be at the top position, right, where the transition is going to occur from upward movement to lowering the movement. So again, four parts. Take any exercise. Let's take lateral raises. So the first part would be the dumbbell lifting up and out to the side. So that would be the concentric, right? So first part. Second part would be the pause or the stopping at the top to transition now to the third part, which is the lowering phase or the eccentric. And then technically at the bottom is this fourth or the transition point to go back up again. So ready, 1, 2, part 3, part 4. Part 1, part 2 is holding it. Part 3 is movement. Part 4 is holding it. Now, we say four parts of the repetition, but in reality, not all four parts of the repetition have any real benefit. And lateral raise is that classic example, right? When I lift up and out, that's good, getting some muscle contraction. I can come to the top and, hold it up there for a second, and then I come down on my negative. But when I get down to the bottom position, there's essentially no tension on the muscle. So it's essentially a waste of time to spend any time in that position. But okay, so I digress a little bit. I wanted to give you a little back information on that, so you understand the concept of the repetition. Now back to the question at hand, which is, well, how do I increase or how do I make the most use of those components then to increase the overall strength? Now, again, we're really focusing or talking about those exercises that are generally compound, meaning they involve more movement of multiple muscles over more than one joint. So again, bench press, squat. I don't do deadlifts. I don't recommend you do regular deadlifts anyway, but if you wanted to do hanging cleans or something like that, you could throw that in there. Again, shoulder pressing, not too many movements, bent over rows, right? Pull downs, close grip, things like that. Okay, those are the type of exercises that we're really talking about. So to answer the question, like I said, is to the key element or the most important thing you could do of the important things you could do is to pause in that negative or at the bottom of the negative before you transition, right? That um, transitioning from the negative and the pause before you go back up into the concentric or the shortening of the muscle, you got to pause. Okay. What we know is that when a muscle is put under tension at different um, lengths of the muscle, right? In this case, going into the negative, what we know is that there is an increased number of cross bridges that occur between the actin and myosin filaments, which are, essentially the parts that components of the sarcomere, and then, of course, the myofibrils and the muscle cell. But what we know is that as the total number of cross bridges increases, you get an increased level of overall tension generation. So what we're looking at is trying to get the muscle into its lengthened position where not only do we start to see an increase in cross bridges, but you can actually get to a point where actually it will decrease. But the point is that when you lengthen the muscle and put it under greater eccentric stress, generally at that bottom position, right? Again, you don't want to do the range of motion to where you're potentially injuring the muscle. But the point is you want to get to that bottom position, in this case, the bench press. And generally, it's going to be where the bar just touches the pecs, just touches, does not rest. Okay. And so my recommendation, that top tip, top thing to do is to come down and pause. Now the question is how long? Well, you can hold it for too long, and then you just fatiguing it, and you're not really helping out your desire to get stronger. So the general recommendation is anything from 1 to 2, maybe 3 seconds is pushing it. But for sure, I pause at least 1 second. So like when I'm doing my bench presses, I go from here, I come down and I just do one, and then I push back up, and I don't go and I don't pause at the top position. Oh, now wait a minute. I just gave you 2 tips. I'm only supposed to give you one. But the one main tip is pause at the bottom. Even on a dumbbell curl, quite honestly, pause at the bottom. Okay. But with the dumbbell curl, it's an quote isolation movement. You don't want to be going so heavy where you have potential disruption of soft tissue other than the muscle, and you can stress the tendon inordinately, and that's not necessary. But the point is that it really doesn't matter what exercise you do unless biomechanically that negative stretch position doesn't have any tension in it, i.e., the lateral raise, right? The lateral raise from here on down, there's no tension here any longer in the deltoid. So pausing down here doesn't help, which is one of the reasons why when I do lateral raises with clients, I have them stop. I don't have them go all the way down to their side. I have them stop at a point where tension is maintained. Yeah, not, I don't just go like this to this, but I have them come down, still a little bit of tension, and I have them come up and pause maybe at the top, okay, where you can give a little bit more tension generation. But the tip itself is on those exercises like the bench press, like the shoulder press, dumbbells, if you're using dumbbells, the squat, right? Any of those exercises, the stiff-legged deadlift, for instance, on those exercises, the most important thing you could do, especially when you're trying to develop overall strength in that particular exercise and stability, by the way, is as you get to the bottom position, slow it down and pause before you push back up. By the way, if you're a power lifter, you got to do that anyway, right? Otherwise, you'll get a red flag, right? You won't get the green light. You got to come down, touch, and go. All I'm saying is that if you want a little bit extra time in there, add an extra half second or second. So come down 1, 2, and then push, get to the top and come right back down and pause. By the way, I always used to say this, is that's where the meat and potatoes are in your exercise, not going from here and holding at the top. It's the exact opposite. Don't spend any time at the top position of a shoulder press. Ain't nothing happening up there. Okay. Neuromuscular wise, physiologic, there's nothing happening here. Nothing going on here. So get out of there and get back down where the meat and potatoes, quote, meat and potatoes is. Come down and pause. Then push and come back down and pause. It's like a piston. It goes up and down and pause. Up and pause. Now that's for shoulder press. Okay. Chest press. Start at the top position, pause, push and back down and hold. So you're getting that pause in the stretch isometric contraction. That is my number one tip. Yes, there are a couple of other things that will help. I kind of gave you one of them, so I showed my hand. But the point is that one tip, pause. By the way, from a safety perspective, that's one of the best things you can do. Okay, because if you're bouncing, you're going to jack up your joints. Don't do that. Doesn't make any sense. You will get stronger. If you pause 1, maybe 2 seconds and do your reps smooth, slow, controlled, particularly on the negative component, that's where you're going to increase your overall strength and the ability to move heavier loads on those particular exercises. So I got a squat. Let me just finish up here. On a squat, you come down, right, to whatever position you're going to go down. Normally, it's where we see the posterior tilting of the pelvis. We come down and we stop. Pause for at least 1 second, maybe 1, maybe 2 seconds. So you come down, pause. You push up and go right back down and pause. That's how the exercise should look ideally, especially when you're trying to increase overall strength. I do that with everybody anyway. The point is that you don't need to, there's nothing happening at the top of a squat. Don't go up and squeeze your butt and your quads. What are you doing? Get down where the meat and potatoes is, and that's in the elongated or stretched, elongated position of the muscle while it's under load. Okay. Got any questions? You can just write them in the comment box below. If this made sense and it's helpful, write understand. All right. Thanks for the video. It was helpful. Just let us know. And if you have not done so, make sure you subscribe to our channel and, give the old like button. If you did like it, share it if you need to, and let us know how we can be of assistance. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.